I have been anticipating the release of this movie for quite some time now. If you follow me on TikTok or Instagram, you know that I made a short video talking about how excited I was for this movie to be released. And unfortunately, but also not unfortunately, I was on my honeymoon the week that it was released, so I wasn't able to see it in theaters the opening weekend. But I did catch it this most recent weekend. And the movie I'm talking about, of course, is Good Boy. And so this movie was making its way around the horror circles because it is, of course, a movie that takes place from the perspective of a dog. It is a horror movie where we follow this man's pup through the sort of supernatural experiences that he's having. And so people were talking about this movie a lot because I think everyone was just really excited to see how this was going to be executed. It's something that we haven't really seen before. Obviously, there's other horror movies that feature dogs, a lot of the time sort of tragically. But this was going to be sort of an experiment in centering an entire story around a dog. And for me personally, my excitement was just building, learning more details about this movie, specifically that the dog is actually the director's own dog, that he has had since he was a puppy. And that some of the movie would include like personal videos of him and the dog's relationships throughout the years. I just love that. I think that is such a fun thing to do, and it really just adds to the kind of like overall heart of the movie even before any of us had seen it. I had also seen interviews with the director who had seen a lot of the horror community's comments worrying about the dog and sort of, without too many spoilers, sort of assured us that this would not be a story that use the death of the dog as kind of like the driving force of the movie. So I think it's just been interesting to see what people's relationship with this movie is before it even came out. So this movie was written and directed by Ben Leonberg. And just looking on IMDb, this is his first full-length feature, I believe. And the cast, of course, stars Indy as himself. So the dog's real name is Indy, and his name is Indy in the movie. A loyal dog moves to a rural family home with his owner only to discover supernatural forces lurking in the shadows. And so the premise for this movie is pretty simple. It really just follows Indy, the dog, and his owner, who has been dealing with a sort of mysterious illness and moves to his grandfather's rural home in the country. Except some sort of build up in the beginning of the movie, it really only takes place in the single location, kind of following Indy's owner and Indy himself through this house and sort of the surrounding woods. So I think mostly this movie was an exploration of getting a dog to act in a horror movie. There are some themes that are kind of present. There is some discussion in a video that the owner is watching about like the connection between man and dog. And so it definitely has kind of like these underlying themes of that bond between humans and dogs, and themes around like loyalty, sort of the idea that dogs are perhaps more connected to like a spirit realm, or they can see or sense things that we can't. So just kind of generally, it's a movie about dogs. It's a movie about dogs and why we love dogs. And talking about the execution of this movie, I won't say too much. Just in general, I'll save that sort of for spoilers. I will say, and probably all reviews that you may see highlights just how excellent Indy is as a dog actor. He has a lot of expressiveness. He is really easy to sort of follow and root for. Obviously, he's a dog, but his performance, right, is actually excellent, right? It is a very interesting journey to take, just kind of experiencing these things with him. And so that part I think was executed really well. This movie is working with very little. It's a limited location, limited budgets, limited movement, right? There's only so much you can do having the primary presence of the movie being a dog. And so I think, you know, this creates a very simple premise, and that might be a little bit difficult for some people who prefer a more loud, intense story in a horror movie. There's a lot that is really impressive about it. The director talked about how the making of this movie took 3 years, mostly because they were trying to get very specific shots and emotions from Indy. So they had to be very patient with the way that they did that. And so you can really feel the crafting and sort of the care and the love that went into this movie, just in the way that it is executed. So, in terms of frights, this is a PG-13 movie, so it is really, there's not really gore, so to speak. There are depictions of kind of a like ghost illness or something. And so there is some like bodily fluids in those scenes. There are a pretty decent number of jump scares, so if that's something you're sensitive to, definitely know that going in. There were some genuinely spooky and off-putting moments, and I think a lot of the tension in this movie comes from worrying about the dog and sort of being present for, you know, his fear and confusion. Um, so that I think for people who have dogs or care about, you know, their pets, this might be challenging for that reason. The frights are also a little clunky in this movie. There's a lot of moments where we build up to something, uh, and then we kind of just hold at the top and then immediately go back down. And so there's not a lot, like we sort of go away from whatever the scary thing is. So it's kind of like this build and then like a drop. And so some of the more frightening parts of the movie kind of get cut short for that reason and weren't quite as satisfying as maybe I was hoping. So I'll get into spoilers now. So if you're hoping to avoid spoilers for Good Boy, stop the video now and come back once you've seen it. Okay, so I am having a really hard time figuring out how I feel about this movie. So if you've seen it, the plotting, like I said earlier, is a little limited, right? And so I think a lot of the effort went into the practical filming of the movie, and that left the plot a little bit flat. So when I was talking about frights, there's so many moments in this movie where I felt like something was going to happen, and then it didn't happen, right? So there were a lot of dream sequences, which is kind of interesting for a movie primarily about a dog. So we see like his dreams, and that provides a lot of the like frightening scenes, which is fine. But it's done, I think, like 3 times in the movie, and that's a lot. That's a lot of dream sequences, even for a movie not about a dog. And it just, I felt like I was waiting a long time for things to kind of get going. And that being said, once things did get going, I found the ending to be a little unsatisfying. So throughout the movie, we're following Indy and his owner is sick. Um, and it's not really explained if it's a legitimate sort of like medical illness or if it's something to do with whatever entity is sort of haunting his grandfather's house. And so as he gets sicker and sicker, he becomes more and more disconnected with Indy. And that is heartbreaking. It's really hard to see. I think it was addressed in some of the behind the scenes that they're, because you don't see anyone's mouth move really, you don't really see faces very distinctly of like the human characters. And so I think a lot of the like yelling and aggressiveness towards the dog was added in later just to avoid like traumatizing him, which I appreciate. um, but it is still hard to watch in a lot of places. And so as we're going through this story, right, we have this build up and then it falls kind of flat, and then we build up again and then it falls kind of flat again. um, and then the ending, essentially, Indy's owner passes away. He dies from whatever this illness is, but Indy is still able to see him. And so he follows him into the basement where he's being dragged away by this entity that, we don't really find out who it is or what it is. And then there's this sort of like final moment where Indy drags him back out. And they have this kind of heart to heart where he tells him he's a good dog. um, and that he has to let him go. And so the owner dies, and Indy is later rescued by the owner's sister. Um, and so I get what they were going for. I think it was meant to be emotional, to have this kind of devastating ending, which it was. But the ending also makes the rest of the movie feel very unsatisfying. It left me kind of wondering, like, why we had followed this dog so far, right? Like, I think it was very much just kind of like he was a means for seeing this, like witnessing it, but was really powerless to do anything about it. And that felt kind of like antithetical to the whole like theme of the movie about like dogs being able to be aware of things and about like the connection. I don't know. It felt it just, I don't know. It left me feeling kind of like just lukewarm. I don't know. I will say though that after watching the movie for the next couple of days, it hit me a little bit harder. I think I was expecting a lot of things and I was waiting for a lot of things while I was watching the movie. And so a lot of things sort of just landed for me a bit more strongly, like in the days following. And I started feeling like a lot more emotional about it. So it was effective in a lot of ways, and I think it was also a little clunky in a lot of ways. But I really don't feel like I can fault it for that, just because it was such a feat, And I don't know. I don't know. I have sort of a like 50-50 with this movie. I really want to love it, but I honestly don't know if I would watch it again. Um, I think it's important to see, and I think it's something that is like a really cool idea, and I hope to see more like innovative stuff like this. I think we need more original ideas and like cool concepts and like leaning into low budget practical stuff with horror, with anything, but with horror specifically, just for me, for my purposes. um, but this was a really original idea. It was executed very well, as far as like the dog element. The plot could have used like a little bit more finessing, I think. So overall, I'm rating this a 3.5. It is a movie that I will recommend, but I can't say that it's one I'll like rewatch. There was a lot that was left unexplained, which doesn't really bother me, right? So we had sort of this introductory story about Indy's owner's grandfather and how he had sort of gone through a similar thing with his dog. So he was getting sick, he was isolating himself, and his dog was trying to warn, him and warn others and try to like save him, and ultimately wasn't able to. Um, and so again, we're not really like, it doesn't really tell us what this entity is or why it's doing what it is. And like I said, that doesn't really bother me, but it is a loose end that is sort of left up to the viewer's interpretation. I think also the fact that there was this other dog who was trying to help his owner, and then also sort of like through the spirit realm help Indy, it just made it all that more frustrating that nothing was able to be done in the end. And I'm all for bummer horror, but it just felt like kind of an incomplete idea in this case. I will say though, at the time of filming this, Good Boy is still in theaters. So if you get a chance to see it in theaters, there is a post-credit scene where Ben Leonberg, he talks about like the filming of the movie. And so if you were feeling a little bit distressed watching Indy go through all this stuff, there's a really sweet little like 5-minute video of him, Ben Leonberg, and his wife trying to capture all of these moments with Indy. And so they kind of juxtapose like the serious moment in the obviously the scene, with the like behind the scenes shot of like them essentially like holding up a little uh whatever to to get Indy's attention and to like create this shot that ends up being this very like emotional, emotive shot for Indy. But in real life, he's just being a dog and just like looking in a direction. So that's really cool and just like interesting to see. So I appreciate that they put that in there. Another thing about Indy is that was sort of revealed in this post-credit scene is that he's not really formally trained in any way. He clearly knows like sit and stay commands, but he is not a trained dog actor. He is just Ben Leonberg's beloved pet dog. And so it's even more impressive that they were able to get this range of emotions. Let me know your thoughts on Good Boy, and if you had just as hard of a time as I did deciding how you felt about it. It is a unique movie, and I really hope to see more things from Ben Leonberg. Uh, I love indie projects, especially ones that people put this much love and care into. So we'll see more from him, and maybe we'll see more from Indy too. I'd love for Indy to continue appearing in horror movies or even movies in general. I mean, it's an excellent dog actor and very cute and very very sweet. So make sure to subscribe for more reviews. I'm also on TikTok and Instagram. I'm on Letterboxd, so please follow me wherever you consume horror content. And I should be back on schedule now after the wedding. So we'll see you next time. Are you Michael Boy?